A man in Alabama would claim that he was just too proud to ask someone for money, for gas. So instead, he commits murder. Hello, true crimerers. This is the case of Wilson Earl Robitaille. Viewer discretion is advised. Before we get started, of course, if you could do me a huge favor and give this video a like. I believe it's the likes that gets the videos pushed out so more people can see them. And I know a lot of people have a hard time liking videos like this, which I understand. So I would put it this way. When you're giving a video like this a like, you're not liking it for the story, because the story is usually awful, but you're giving a like to the storyteller, if that helps. Also, I hope you enjoy my face, because you're going to be seeing it a lot in this video, because I unfortunately don't have any photos of the victims, the crime scene. I have like one clear picture of the bad guy, and that's about it. So sorry about that. The story takes place in Hamilton, Alabama, and it happened in May of 2001. Stuart and Alyssa Taylor were a very happily married couple with 2 children. 34-year-old Alyssa Lynn Taylor, she was born on November 8th, 1966, in Memphis, Tennessee. She would eventually relocate to Alabama with her then husband, Stuart. From what I can tell, and there really isn't a whole lot of detailed information about the family, but what I can see is that Stuart and Alyssa had a baby boy named Tyler in 1990. Unfortunately, that baby passed away, also in 1990. But then, in 1993, they would have another child, and her name was Robin. A few years later, in 1996, Alyssa gave birth to their son, Trent. Alyssa worked as a registered nurse, and she was employed at the Russellville Hospital, which was nearby in Hamilton. At some point, kind of early on, Stuart Taylor worked, I guess, at like a motorcycle shop or a bike shop of some kind. And when he worked there, he, I guess, became kind of acquaintances, sort of friends, with a gentleman named Wilson Robitaille. Wilson Robitaille was kind of this recluse, kind of almost like a drifter, a hermit type kind of character. He seemed to live most of his adult life in a camper. As a matter of fact, at one point, Stuart Taylor allowed Wilson to park his camper, I guess in their backyard or right next to their house, and essentially allowed Wilson to live on their property for a brief amount of time. And while he did that, Wilson worked for the family, meaning he did work around the house, maintenance stuff, that kind of thing. And apparently that was all, fine, and there wasn't really any significant issues. But then at some point, Wilson would go his own way. He would take the camper and leave the property, and that should have been it, but unfortunately it wasn't. It was the very early morning hours of May 11th, 2001. Stuart Taylor got up for the morning, got ready, and then he left for work. Alyssa would be home with the 2 kids that morning, 7-year-old Robin and 4-year-old Trent. Basically, it was just a normal morning for them. Alyssa was, up making breakfast and, just hanging out with the kids. That same morning, as Alyssa is doing her normal stuff around the house and Stuart is on his way to work and going to work, Wilson Robitaille, he had now been living in Phoenix City, Alabama. Well, Wilson, I guess, really needed some cash that day. He was desperate for money. He had no gas money. He needed something. He didn't have a job, and so he had nothing. So he came up with an idea. Well, I'm going to go rob someone. Like you do. He said his plan was to burglarize a couple that he knew from the 90s that lived in Hamilton. This couple, he said, owned a jewelry store. And he knew that the couple kept jewelry, I guess, back at their house. a lot of it. I'm not sure to what degree, if it was like merchandise that they were storing at their house or what the case may be, but he said he knew where in the house the jewelry would be located. So Wilson actually drove to Hamilton from Phoenix City the night before, which was May 10th, 2001. And then he just sort of slept in his car overnight and woke up when the sun came up. According to him, he then goes to a gas station / convenience store in Hamilton. You know, he lived there for some time and he knew a lot of the people there. And so he wanted to just shoot the shit with some friends at the convenience store. And so he did that for a little bit. And then after that, he drove to the house that he planned to burglarize, you know, jewelry. And he kind of parked a little bit down the way, but he can still see the house from his car. And he just sat there and he waited for the couple to leave to go to their jewelry store. He waited. He waited. He waited. They weren't leaving. He got nervous, apparently. He said, "Oh, I can't do this. I can't break into their house. And it's just not like me. I can't do it. And so he said he finally he mustered the courage to, I guess, call another friend who lived nearby and said, "Hey, can I come by?" And I guess the idea that he had in his mind was he was going to meet this friend and he was going to ask the friend for money. But then when he got to, I guess, that friend's house, he said, I can't do it. I have too much pride. I'm too prideful, he says, to ask for money. So he didn't do it. He didn't just ask his friend for a few bucks. And then he thinks to himself, hey, the Taylors live nearby, Alyssa and Stuart. I'll go pay them a visit just to hang out. He claims at this point he did not have any plans to rob them or steal anything, just to go by and say hi. You know, catch up with some old friends. After all, he did live on their property for some time. He did work for them. They would be happy to see him. So he gets to the Taylor house. He knocks on the door. Alyssa, she opens the door and she says, hey, Wilson, oh my gosh, nice to see ya. She actually invites him in to, come sit down and chat. She says, hey, Stuart's already at work. Sorry you missed him. Then they just sat down at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and just sort of conversated for a while. After 20-30 minutes or so, Alyssa gets up because she needs to go take care of something to do with the kids because they weren't in the kitchen with them. They were in another room. And that's when Wilson realizes, or he spots, Alyssa's purse just sort of sitting out in the open. He says to himself, I need money bad. I need gas money at least. So he says he begrudgingly, he felt guilty about doing it. I don't buy it. But he then reached into her purse as she was gone and starts to take cash out of the wallet that was in her purse. But unfortunately for Alyssa, she walked in on it. And she said, what are you doing? She, according to him, ran towards his direction to grab the money from him and, put it back in her purse and say, get out. What are you doing? Get out of here. Wilson Robitaille had, I guess, some kind of utility belt on, had tools and stuff. And one of the tools was a Leatherman tool. It was described as a multi-purpose tool, but it had a sharp knife type tool on it. And he went to reach for it and he grabbed it, and this caused Alyssa to freak out, oh my God, what's he going to do? And so she tried to run. This is when 7-year-old Robin hears the commotion and she kind of walks into the kitchen area and she starts screaming, she sees now this guy with a knife and his mom, her mom is screaming and everything. It's what's going on. So Wilson then grabs a steak knife that was near him and he begins to chase Alyssa and Robin. So he now is going after them. Robin manages to get away from him, and she actually runs out onto the carport. And that's when Wilson chases after her, and before she can do anything, he grabs the 7-year-old girl and he brings her back into the house and then locks the door. He then takes the steak knife and he drives it into the 7-year-old girl's back so forcefully that the handle breaks off and the blade is still stuck in her back. She managed to run away. He grabs another knife and then proceeds to chase after her again. She, being just a little child, runs to her bedroom because that's, she thinks this is a safe place. This is my room. And she tries to close the door, but he manages to stop her, and then he chases her towards her bed, where he takes the knife plus the tool he had, and he just begins to stab the 7-year-old girl numerous times until she is dead. Alyssa, she had taken Trent, and she told Trent to go hide, and Alyssa was trying to hide, as well. It wasn't, I don't believe it was like a super large house, so, there wasn't really a whole lot of places that they could go to hide. And by the way, Alyssa was she didn't know Robin had gone her own way when they were kind of running away. So in the commotion, this is all going on in a matter of just moments. And so it's not like Alyssa didn't abandon Robin. It was just it all happened super fast. But Wilson found Alyssa, and Alyssa allegedly screamed, "Why are you doing this? Why are you hurting us?" And he just responded to her, "Because I've gone too far now." Meaning he basically needed to kill everyone now. He backed Alyssa into a corner, and then he just took both, he took the knife and the tool, and he just began to just stab her and stab her and stab her until she was dead. Trent was still, 4-year-old Trent, 4 years old. He was still hiding where his mom told him to hide. Wilson found him and proceeded to stab the young boy until he was dead. He goes back to where Alyssa was, and he thought she was dead, but turns out she wasn't. She was basically gurgling and trying to breathe. He says that he told her, "I'm sorry, you can't talk anymore," because he had cut her in the throat. And then he stabbed her one more time to basically end it. He then went back to the bodies of the 2 children because of the situation with Alyssa. He wanted to make sure they were dead. And so he stabbed them both again, but they were already both dead. Basically, the coroner report would later state that the 2 children had stab wounds where basically no blood had come out because those stab wounds were inflicted after the heart stopped beating. The Taylors had several jars full of coins because they saved coins for a rainy day, like a lot of people do. And Wilson knew that, and so he found them and he stole them. He then stole Alyssa's entire purse, just everything. He took all the murder weapons that he had used, and then he fled the house. He drove back to Phoenix City, and later that afternoon, Stuart Taylor decided he was going to, take his lunch break. And so he went back to his house. That's what he usually would do. He would go back home for lunch. He just didn't realize that this particular day he would be walking into a bloodbath. And that's exactly what happened. He came home for lunch and he found the bodies of his wife and his daughter. Obviously, he was in just complete disarray, complete shock. He was just defeated, as anyone would be. He called police, and then when police arrived, that's when they located the body of Trent hiding in a storage closet. Apparently, Wilson wasn't so good at keeping well hidden that morning, because, like I said, he had gone to see friends at the convenience store before he had gone to the Taylor house. So when this all broke, basically people were like, well, hey, you might want to look at Wilson because he was here that morning. We know he was strapped for cash because he was talking about it. He knows the Taylors well. He knows their house. He knows them. He knows it all. So police would go to Phoenix City, and it's there that they would end up arresting Wilson, and he just flat out confessed. He said he did it. It's shit like that when someone is arrested and they're like, yep, I did it. It's then why did you do it then? If you were just going to get caught anyway, and you were just going to tell on yourself immediately. I don't understand. But he initially just gave a very detailed confession. So basically everything I just said about what happened were his words to police that they dictated, that was recorded. That was his confession. The coroner, after the autopsy, would determine that, there was some extreme overkill here. Alyssa was stabbed 18 times. The 7-year-old girl, Robin, was stabbed 17 times. And the 4-year-old, Trent, was stabbed 10 times. Wilson, basically, his confession lined up identical to all of the injuries. He was able to basically recount where each victim was stabbed and how many times he stabbed each of them. It lined up exactly with the coroner report. So they knew that this was the guy. They knew he did it. He would even take them to like this, I guess, marsh nearby, near like Phoenix City, where he threw away the purse and like the murder weapons and all that. They did recover the purse. I don't think they recovered all of the murder weapons, but the purse was found. So again, it all indicates, yep, he's the guy who did it. It was like signed, sealed, delivered. He just, but for some reason, he decided to completely change his mind. When he went on trial, he didn't plead guilty, even though he had confessed to all of it. He pled not guilty. And at trial, he told a different story about what happened. He said that he was actually still working for Stuart Taylor, but not working on the house. He said that he was a drug runner for Stuart Taylor and that he was delivering drugs to Tennessee. And basically, he says, well, on the way, I passed by the Turner house, so I'm doing this drug run for Stuart Taylor. I might as well go say hi to his wife, who I know. So he says he then just took a pit stop by their house just to talk to, Alyssa and say hi. He says that when he was in the house, when I guess Alyssa had walked away to go take care of the kids, he says he then heard a sudden loud noise. He began to walk towards that noise, and then someone struck him over the head. And then, next thing he remembers, he's waking up in his car. Totally blacked out. He has no idea how he got there. He doesn't know what happened in the interim. But he was still parked outside of the Taylor house, so he went back inside and said, oh my God, I don't know what happened. Then he just saw 3 dead bodies, and he stole Alyssa's purse, okay? Instead of calling the cops, and then he fled. Clearly, this is a total bullshit story, and the jury was like, yeah, no. Because they also heard his confession tape. They heard his detailed account of what he said he did, back when he was arrested. It's like, why, if this was, you didn't do it, why are you not telling police immediately? Why are you stealing her purse? Why are you fleeing the area? Bud, shut up. You did this. And sure as shit, he was convicted of the murder of all 3 individuals. As a matter of fact, he was convicted of 6 counts of capital murder. And the reason why is because not only for the physical murders, but also because he had committed murders in the course of a felony, in the course of robbing a house. So he got slapped with a whole bunch of capital murder convictions. And he was sentenced to death. The trial was in 2001-ish, I want to say. 2002 maybe. It's April of 2023 right now, and he is actually still awaiting his death sentence to be carried out. No, I don't know why sometimes people are executed within a couple of years and sometimes people have to wait decades. I think it has a lot to do with the appeals process, because I think they're entitled to, which is fine, they're entitled to use all of their potential appeals and exhaust all of those before an execution can be scheduled. I think it depends on the state as well. But yeah, he's been on death row for over 20 years now and still awaiting. Here's an interesting fact that I learned when I was reading about this story. There's really not many places to find information about this case, unfortunately, but apparently there is a cast member from one of the seasons of The Bachelorette. One of the, I don't watch The Bachelor or The Bachelorette, so I don't know anything about any of them, but one of the Bachelorettes, her name is Hannah Brown. Apparently she was the niece of Alyssa. And the two kids were her cousins. She was, very young when this happened, and she, I think, remembers it being just like a super traumatizing thing, that it just really kind of rocked the entire family, obviously. She said that she remembers that morning she knew something was wrong because her dad, Robert Brown, who I believe was Alyssa's brother, he told Hannah, I'm missing your dance recital today. Like, he said it in a very panicked way, and she didn't really know exactly what had happened because she was still very young. But she does remember kind of that day of how the family reacted, and she found out later on when she was older the more the details of what happened. But it just goes to show how stories like this, how these types of events don't just affect the direct victims and the surviving husband. This affects a lot of people. Hannah didn't exactly know all the gory details, but it still affected her and it changed her life. When you murder someone, you're not just murdering one victim, or in this case 3. You have so many more victims beyond the people you physically killed. You have families, friends, co-workers. You have this massive just network of people in each of their lives that you have now changed forever when you take a person's life. And not everyone recovers well from that. Some people do. Hannah, she's gone on to win Dancing with the Stars, I guess. I never watched that either. But she was really close with her aunt and her cousins. And so, but, luckily for her, she was able to kind of go on to, have a good life. But it doesn't happen with everyone. And so you have to think about that. And I talked about this a lot on TikTok too. It's why people like me and other people who tell true crime stories, why we get so mad when people were making jokes, for example, about Jeffrey Dahmer and his victims, and they were, there were people who had dressed in these really awful costumes, people dressed as a refrigerator with the head, in the freezer. People don't seem to realize that there are still victims, maybe not direct murder victims, but there are still victims around. In Dahmer's situation, those murder victims' families are still around, and they can still see everything and hear everything. So, you have to be more respectful. You have to be more understanding that there are just so many victims in the world of murder. But, that's, yeah. But one day, I'm sure soon, Mr. Wilson Robitaille will be put to death, and that will be history. But that is it for this case, True Crime Aroonies. I hope you found it interesting. If you have tripped, fallen, stumbled your way into this video, hello, I'm Mike. How you doing? Good? Great. I tell true crime stories, if you couldn't tell, if you haven't been around the past, 20 some odd minutes. I tell 4 of them a week here on YouTube. I tell 1 over on Instagram. I tell 1 over on Facebook, and I pepper in some throughout the week on TikTok. So please subscribe here, like the video, hit the bell, all that jazz, and then follow me on the other platforms if you like. Plenty of content to go around. Next, if you have a case you would like me to cover, I do pick my cases as randomly as humanly possible, but I do have a list of now 4,600 plus names, so if you have a case you want me to cover, please check my list first. It's public. It's in my link tree. Scroll through it, search it, whatever you got to do. And if you don't see the name, then email it me. My email's in the link tree and also in that document. Email me just the name, where it happened, when it happened, and I will add that name to my list. I may not respond to you, but I will add the name to my list, I promise. and I will cover it eventually. If you see the name already there, please don't email it to me. It's already there. I will cover the case at some point. I just don't know when. Next, if you would like to support me anyway, if you want to, I sell merch. We sell t-shirts and hoodies and a mug and a wine glass and stuff like that. I think Adam is working on a couple new shirts to put up on the thing that should be available sometime very soon, I hope. We do ship all over the world. Yeah, all over the world. Even Jupiter. That's a different world. Mike, you're an idiot. But yeah, we ship internationally, so if you want to order something, go for it. Great, thanks. Next, if you have a Discord account and you want to join my server, please feel free to do so. It's also in the link tree below, okay? Ew, that was so weird. Please be over the age of 18 if you're going to join it. If you are not, you will be kicked out. So, sayonara, sucker. That was rude. And the who's you, what's the who's you, what's it, who's... That's it for this video, True Crime Maroony Doony Deen Doony 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 Deen Dongs. For today's ending, Molly wanted to say goodbye. Say something. Say something. Just burped. You're gross. Say words. Say words. You're embarrassing me. Say something. For sakes, you're a talking dog. Say something. Swear to God, she knows how to talk. Don't try to be cute and kiss. You freak. You freak, girl. Love ya. She's rude. I don't know how to say goodbye, so... Flip-flops are my shoes of preference. I don't... Okay. Right.